which I closely follow, and especially to do with the fact that Professor Jaya Shankar believed in the people, in the power of people, in the power of people's movements and struggles, and now we can say really with evidence that people's movements and struggles, they succeed. We have right now a state called Telangana. I mean, we wouldn't have thought maybe, let's say, 25 years ago to believe that, there will be a state called Telangana, and the party in power that kind of allowed that to happen, you defeated that party in election. So after all, this is the power of people that's supreme, right? And that also gives me a lot of hope as somebody who believes that the battle of democracy will be fought and won by the most marginalized. And this is true especially in terms of the Indian society. So we've just got done with a very, I would say, long and strenuous and hard-fought elections. And the results were somewhat on the unexpected lines. I mean, there were several things that people like me could see almost like a writing on the wall. But despite that, the dominance of the mainstream media, the dominance of the BJP and RSS narrative sometimes make you doubt yourself. So today, the topic that I thought I will shed a light on have Lok Sabha election results brought hope for democracy in India, and what changes will it bring to our larger society, especially the most marginalized sections? This is a question for me and for you, and I hope to, at least in parts, answer some parts of this question that is before me and before you. And I'm not claiming here that I exactly know the answers to this question. But before we could answer the question that is before us, we should understand where we were before this election took place, where we are right now when we know what the election results are, and where will we be, or where we can hope to be, let's say in a couple of years from now. इस इलेक्शन के रिजल्ट के बाद कहाँ थे हम, ये समझना बहुत ज़रूरी है कि शुरुआत कहाँ से की, 10 साल में क्या हुआ, और इस इलेक्शन रिजल्ट के आने के बाद कहाँ पर खड़े हुए हैं हम, हमारी तारीख में, हमारे इतिहास में खड़े कहाँ हैं, और कहाँ हमारा जो भविष्य है और मुस्तकबिल है हमें लेकर जा रहा है. तो इस सवाल का जवाब देने के लिए मुश्किल सवाल है ये, और ख़ासकर जब ये इलेक्शन रिजल्ट आया, सो पीपल लाइक मी एंड आई एम श्योर many of you, we took a sigh of relief. We said we can breathe. We were able to breathe, because this is even when the opposition did not fully win the election, BJP did not fully lose the election, but still, why did most of the people, especially from the minority communities, from people who are the marginalized communities like our laborers, farmers, women, unemployed youth, even I would say majority of South India, including the state of Telangana, why did most of us think that this was an election result which brought a sense of relief, a sigh of relief, a much needed respite, a much needed course correction? जहां हम पहुंच गए थे 10 साल में पीछे, उससे थोड़ा सा एक छोटा सा यू टर्न लेके वापस आए. मतलब मुझे पूरा इस बात का यकीन नहीं है कि हम पूरी तरह से वापस आ गए हैं, लेकिन जो लग रहा था कि फाशिज्म की तरफ, फाशीवाद की तरफ हमारा देश जा रहा था, उससे हम कम से कम थोड़ा सा हमने यू टर्न वापस लिया है. तो अगले कुछ मिनटों में आई एम गोइंग टू एक्सप्लेन अ फ्यू थिंग्स टू यू, एंड आई विल एक्सप्लेन दैट एज अ जर्नलिस्ट, एज अ वुमन, and also as a Muslim. 3 of these identities that I carry with me in no particular order, and last 10 years have affected me as a journalist, as a woman, and also as a member of the Muslim community. So that's why I speak as a reporter, as an observer of politics, but also a witness to the day-to-day politics. And especially, I mean, I have been around for more than 20 years, but I would say the significant part of my professional life as an adult I've spent covering Mr. Modi and his politics, even when he was the Chief Minister of Gujarat, and now when he has been for the last 10 years, Prime Minister of India, and most likely for the next 5 years if the government survives. So as I said that all these three identities of mine, I have been, belonging to the community of journalists, and as a woman, my gender, and also as a Muslim, at the receiving end of Mr. Modi and RSS's politics. So I come from the section of the society which I call the victim of Mr. Modi's politics. So I come from a victim and oppressed community. I mean, you begin with press freedom and start with how I can say he was, and his politics were anti-women. He kind of tried to project himself as this crusader for women's rights, which he was not. And finally, this whole 1 decade, if in one phrase I can, kind of conclude, was that it will be known in the history of Indian politics as the era of anti-Muslim politics. So, going a little bit into contemporary history, where we were. So we were never a perfect democracy. I'm sure history books, when they're written and as they are being written, are full of stories of oppression and violence against the marginalized, whether they are laborers, Dalits, tribals, people from rural India, whether they are Muslims or they're Christians, or ignoring the issues of the unemployed, and also people who could never go to school or never could go to college. And there were never a decade in India where we did not have communal riots, especially tension between Hindus and Muslims. We've seen the high-handedness of the state and state's machinery. We've seen police's communal behavior when it comes to India's Muslims. We've seen women languishing at the periphery of Indian democracy, where their issues were never highlighted. Even right now, you may have a few women ministers who actually share our gender, but I can't say it with confidence that in the last 10 years or even in this 11th year, there is a single policy that I can underline and say that this women got the fruits of women leaders being in politics and on such important political positions. So hardly there was, they could never rise above the party line and could do anything for women in particular, because they were women ministers. So there was a complete, I would say that we had problems, and the most marginalized were forced to live on the periphery of Indian democracy. But what Mr. Modi did was, उसी जो डिस्क्रिमिनेशन और वायलेंस था, वही जो हिंसा थी और भेदभाव था, उसका लेवल उस हद तक पहुंच गया जहां पर it demanded our undivided and full attention. And what was at stake in this election was the very existence of Indian democracy. Whether we will survive as a democracy or as Indian democracy as we've known it. A democracy which is liberal, secular, believes in the idea of India where every citizen is equal, whether man or woman, Hindu or Muslim, rural or urban, tribal or upper caste, tribal or Brahmin, everybody will be an equal. So that idea was challenged in that 10 years time between 2014 and 2019. So I divide this 1 decade into two phases, and then we'll come to the third phase, which has started now in 2014. It'll kind of help us understand when we divide, the time period that Mr. Modi ruled over India as his, being the Prime Minister. So 2014 से 2019 तक क्या कर रहे थे नरेंद्र मोदी? बीजेपी क्या कर रही थी? आरएसएस क्या कर रही थी? 2014 से 2019 के बीच वो माहौल तैयार कर रहे थे. They were preparing, doing the groundwork. They were building an environment where they will finally, when they bring in legislations which are anti-constitution, anti-democracy, and particularly anti-Muslim, then there are not going to be many voices which will oppose him. So between 14 and 19, you saw how there was, lynching started. Since 2015, the first lynching, documented lynching in the Modi era we saw was in 2015. So the anti-Muslim and anti-poor environment was being prepared. News anchors every evening, they were coming up with some subject or the other to kind of indoctrinate Indian people, especially people from the majority community. So day after day, show after show, they have more hatred for Muslims and Christians and India's poor than they did the last day, the previous day. So through media, through propaganda, through these foot soldiers of the RSS, they were preparing an environment, एक माहौल बना रहे थे कि भाई देखिए ये लोग हैं, ये दुश्मन हैं, सारी जो परेशानियां हैं भारत में अभी वो इन लोगों की वजह से हैं, ये मुसलमान हैं, बच्चे ज़्यादा पैदा करते हैं, पढ़ाई लिखाई नहीं करते, टैक्स पे नहीं करते, हिंदू टैक्स पे करता है, मुसलमान का बच्चा स्कूल में पढ़ता है, हिंदू टैक्स पे करता है, मुसलमान को नौकरी मिलती है. धीरे धीरे they were trying to kind of inject the people of India with this poison. Or they, along with this, additionally, all they started doing was that they started preparing a very pliant state institutions like CBI, ED, Income Tax Department, Judiciary, a large part of media, a large part of bureaucracy. All of that was taking place simultaneously, which was trying to suppress anybody raising a voice against the government's politics and policy. Demonization of opposition. And especially they got hold of the large part of media and also lower judiciary. Trying to kind of put their own people, the people they like, on important key positions. मतलब जजों में अपनी भर्ती कर दीजिए आप अपने जैसे लोगों की, वकीलों में अपने जैसे लोगों की भर्ती कर दीजिए, मीडिया में जो एडिटर्स हैं, ऐसा नहीं है कि पहले दलित ट्राइबल कम्युनिटीज से एडिटर्स होते थे, बट नाउ इट्स लाइक आउट राइट, if the RSS does not approve you, you cannot be an editor of a major newspaper or a major news channel. So basically journalistic appointments gradually started becoming political appointments. That even the most kind of popular faces, or I would say the most prominent faces you see, they may be popular or not, but you are bound to see them every evening, because these are the 5 major Hindi news channels, and the moment you turn on your TV, this is who you see. So whether you like them or not, you cannot kind of get rid of them. So they will be imposed on you and will try to gradually indoctrinate you into believing that India's problems start with these people and end with these people. Then came 2019. 2014 to 2019, you know what happened in 2019 elections. I mean, the people of India decided to give another chance to Mr. Modi, and to this I say, he didn't have to be the most popular leader. Even somebody called Manmohan Singh, somebody who was a silent prime minister, Manmohan Singh, he was also given 2 chances, not just 1. So the people of India, gave him another chance. What happened between 2019 and 2024 will be the darkest chapter in Indian history, political history, and also media. The darkest. What happened? मैं इसको कंपेयर करती हूँ एक तरह के सर्कस से. एक ऐसा सर्कस चल रहा है जिसमें आप जानते हैं सर्कस में अलग अलग तरह के रंग होते हैं, म्यूजिक होता है, नाच होता है. There is so much entertainment that you find yourself, even if you're not liking it, you're so busy watching it, that there are women dancing in the background, there is somebody जो roll कर रहा है balls को, यहाँ पे music बज रहा है, then there are lightings, and there's so much entertainment, and you get so busy in that entertainment that you forget that if that's going on for 2 hours, you wouldn't want to leave. And that's the whole idea about circus, that it makes no sense, but keeps you entertained and busy. So I compare the period between 2019 and 2024 as a circus kind of an age of Indian politics. और उसमें क्या हो रहा था? उसमें हो रहा था, first of all, Mr. Modi started with a law against triple talaq. Then the next thing he introduced was the abrogation of Article 370. I mean, journalists were not even done, journalists like me, done covering such big legislative, steps that the government took. We were not even done, and especially organizations with minimum kind of resources like ours. Then came CAA, and then came, these three things were happening at the same time. There was bulldozer politics. The same time, journalists were being threatened. If you see my timeline between 29 and 24 on Twitter, there were 2 consecutive years when an international organization, a university, did a survey, and I was the most trolled and most abused journalist in India. I was abused a few million times within a span of 30 days. So much so that I stopped going to Twitter, I stopped going to Instagram, I stopped checking my emails, because there would be some, video threatening me for, they will give me death threats, rape threats, graphic details on what they wanted to do with me. Just because I was covering Kashmir, because I was covering CAA, because I was commenting and criticizing the government of the day, which essentially is my duty. So I was being punished, trolled, humiliated, threatened with death and rape threats because I was doing my duty at a time when most of the media, they had become pliant and had become foot soldiers of the current government. They had literally become these megaphones, an extension of, let's say, INB ministry, an extension of Narendra Modi's propaganda machinery. So then, I was just one of the few journalists, I still am one of the few journalists who are still questioning the government. So these were the things taking place simultaneously. तो इधर CAA लागू हो गया, शाहीन बाग मूवमेंट हो रहा है, उधर कश्मीर में, पूरे कश्मीर में कर्फ्यू लगा के पूरा कश्मीर बंद करके आर्टिकल 370 वहाँ लगा दिया गया. इसके बाद जर्नलिस्ट को जेल भेजा जा रहा है, उनको थ्रेटन किया जा रहा है, इसके साथ साथ उनको अरेस्ट किया जा रहा है, बाकायदा जेल में जा रहे हैं, उनकी फैमिलीज़ को थ्रेटन किया जा रहा है. एंड दिस वॉज हैपनिंग एट अ पोलिटिकल लेवल. सोशल लेवल पे क्या हो रहा था? सोशल लेवल पे व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप्स में क्लासमेट का दुश्मन बन रहा था, आपके को वर्कर्स को आपका दुश्मन बनाया जा रहा था, जर्नलिस्ट को जर्नलिस्ट का दुश्मन बनाया जा रहा था, एक्टिविस्ट को एक्टिविस्ट का दुश्मन बनाया जा रहा था. नेबर्स वर बेइंग फॉर ईच अदर्स ब्लड, that I want to see you killed because you belong to a different religion. So all of this was taking place in classrooms, WhatsApp groups, in offices, in newsrooms, in neighborhoods, and democratic institutions which were supposed to work, which was supposed to correct this, had become a complete slave to the regime. They had almost surrendered. And media people had become full-time hate mongers. You remember when during the COVID time, they went to an extent where they blamed the whole pandemic on the Muslims of India. When there were vegetable and fruit sellers who were asked not to enter residential societies, they couldn't sell vegetables and fruits because of who they were. I mean, not that it's not continuing right now, but maybe not on that scale. There was a raid on The Wire. There were several cases on The Wire, the organization that I work for. There was a police raid, and the raid consisted a couple of dozen policemen and women who entered our office. I was in office that time, and the kind of questions were asked of us. And before the raid, there was a police team which was sent to, during the 15th August time, the police team was sent to the Wire's office asking for me and a couple of other journalists. And when our staff asked them that, why are you here for? So they said they're doing it as a regular precautionary measure just before 15th August, Independence Day. Like, police people now are entering newsrooms because they want to take precautionary measures before Independence Day. This is the time and days people like me have seen. Attack on universities like AMU and JNU, both the universities that I've studied. And many people like me who not only went to jail, they're still in jail. People like Omar Khalid, people like Safura Zargar, many others like, Siddiq Kappan, the journalist from Kerala. I mean, people went to jail for no fault of theirs, and some of them are still there. So basically, what they were trying to do between 14 and 19, they were trying to create enemies of the nation. And who are these enemies? The enemies are Muslims, are Christians, leftists, intellectuals, JNU, AMU, English speaking elite, and also, you'll be surprised, the strongest and the most vicious enemy would be the Congress Party, the Indian National Congress. All of these people were projected as the enemies of the nation, enemies of the Hindus, and the savior called Narendra Modi was going to come and save you from these enemies. So on one hand, आपके ये सारे दुश्मन हैं, उन दुश्मनों से आपको बचाएगा कौन? ये साहब हैं, ये मसीहा हैं जो बचाएंगे आपको. तो इन मसीहा की जरूरत है इन दुश्मनों से लड़ने के लिए. And he will not only fight these enemies, he will also bring back the long lost Hindu glory. सनातन का राज वापस आएगा. ये सारी चीजें मीडिया में प्रोजेक्ट की जा रही थी. So finally we, 5 years we saw all of this, and on January 22, we finally saw all of this culminating into a day when the Ram temple was inaugurated. And Narendra Modi, who was supposed to be the Prime Minister for 1.4 billion people, he styled himself as some kind of a Hindu king. So first he started doing this when he inaugurated the new Parliament building, and finally in January, he did that when he inaugurated the temple. What the BJP was hoping to do with that? See, they prepared environment between 14 and 19, I told you how. 19 and 24, they established those enemies and also established the savior who's going to save people of India, especially the majority community, from those enemies. And now, finally in January, elections were to take place between April to June, that he is that king that you all were waiting for hundreds of years. And the BJP and RSS were hoping that this will actually create a Hindutva vote bank for them. After 10 years of work, 10 years of hard work, the culmination was the building of the Ram temple, and they were hoping that it's going to at least get them some additional 10 crore votes. So even if they lose some votes because of anti-incumbency, because of, this political kind of fatigue that any political party has. Although he said he's not like any other politician, he said he is some kind of a Paramatma. Didn't he say that? So which means Paramatmas are not supposed to even contest elections for that matter, leave aside losing an election. He was a Paramatma, so he didn't even need to contest an election. So they were hoping that this is going to get them 10 crore votes. But what happened was completely opposite of that. The whole election campaign was surrounded and was fought on the face of Mr. Modi. In every constituency he went to, he said, you are voting for me. These people, these candidates are my representatives. So if this was Narendra Modi who was contesting more than 500 seats, then it is Narendra Modi who lost all of these seats that he lost, right? Do you agree with me?
Yeah.
If he was the one and they were just supposed to be his representatives, तो अगर जीतने वाले थे परमात्मा, तो हारने वाले भी तो वही होंगे. So there were two things they were trying to do. First of all, as I said, Narendra Modi is contesting elections, not 543 people. Number two, he said, these are the enemies. I need to continue to fight with them, and I am your savior. And I am going to establish Hindu Rashtra, where the Hindus, upper caste Hindus, Brahmins also of the type that the BJP and RSS like. Many poor Brahmins. I know many poor Brahmins. Not that everybody is now happy and prosperous and in power. All Brahmins are not there. So only their types. So he was trying to say that, and outrightly when his whole election campaign, if you see, that was an anti-Muslim election campaign when he said the Congress party is even going to take away your Mangal Sutra, your resources, and give it to people who produce more children, to Bangladeshis. So this was the whole election campaign. Modi, pro-Hindutva, for Hindu Rashtra, anti-Muslim, where you give me 400 seats, ab ki baar 400 par, so that I could build a Hindu nation. So the mandate we've got right now is that people of India have rejected the idea of a Hindu Rashtra. People of India have rejected the politics of majoritarianism, of supremacy of one community and second-class citizenship to the other community. People of India have said they are for democracy, they are for secularism, they are for pro-poor policies. And they want to tell Mr. Modi and all the future rulers and leaders who will come and become prime ministers and chief ministers, they want to tell everybody now and later they have a voice and they will speak when they want to.
Very good.
So as I said, this, what was at stake was nothing less than the democracy of India. And I think this was some kind of a referendum on India's democracy, whether people of India wanted a democracy or not. I don't even know that there are people who even understand what democracy is. People who have never gone to a school, who never saw maybe face of a book, who were never enrolled for education, they even understand what equality is. They even understand what secularism is. They even understand that they voted for a democratic future of India. But what I understand is that people voted against authoritarianism. तानाशाही के खिलाफ वोट पड़ा है. उत्तर प्रदेश के छोटे छोटे गांव देहात कस्बों में जाके मैंने ट्रैवल किया. वहाँ पर दलित समाज के लोग, ऐसे मुस्लिम समाज के लोग, मुसलमानों में भी आप जानते हैं कास्ट होती है, लोएस्ट कास्ट ग्रुप्स, जिनके उन्होंने नहीं, उनके दादा ने नहीं, उनके परदादा ने नहीं, उनके बच्चों ने नहीं, कभी किसी ने स्कूल नहीं देखा, वो लोग कह रहे थे कि अरविंद केजरीवाल को जेल नहीं भेजना चाहिए था. दे वर सेइंग हेमंत सोरेन को जेल नहीं भेजना चाहिए था. ये तानाशाही नहीं चलेगी. Even people who were traditional voters of the BJP and who may have even voted for the BJP this time even, they said we don't like तानाशाही, authoritarianism पसंद नहीं है, dictatorship नहीं चाहिए. This word that I heard again and again from Uttar Pradesh to Karnataka to Kashmir to Bihar to Haryana to Madhya Pradesh, wherever I traveled, there was one word that was echoing all over was what? That this vote will be against dictatorship. तानाशाही के खिलाफ वोट डालेंगे. Was that the same in Telangana? I came here in March, April, did not come here exactly when the voting was taking place, but in March I could understand a little bit of the political and electoral environment that was taking place. But how did we reach here? How did those people who have never gone to a school, who can't read or write or speak much, who are not as educated as we are, far away from that, how did we reach here? I think that is the most important part of my lecture right now. And that will resonate with Professor Jayashankar then, and his legacy then more than anything else that I can tell you right now. It is the people and people's movement.
Very good.
In 2020, at the end of 2020, when I was covering NTCA NRC movement, couple of things I'll tell you and then maybe I'll describe. So couple of things I believe, first of all, NTCA NRC movement or Shaheen Bagh movement was reason number one. Reason number two, farmers movement. Reason number three, Bharat Jodo Yatra. Reason number four, the emergence of the independent media, platforms like ours. I mean, you might call me pompous, but I think I can congratulate myself. I can pat myself on my back. That it's the journalists like me, the organizations like ours who thought, and not that they were not There were several depressing days. There were several dark mornings before this day arrived, when people like me thought that I was irrelevant, my work was irrelevant. Why am I even doing this? When every day I wake up, face the camera, try to inform people, educate them, try to kind of see them reason, and still one political party and ideology, election after election, they are brainwashing people, and the party continues to win, and the fight for democracy is over. There were many dark mornings, not nights, very many dark mornings people like me have had. When I thought relevance, I have lost relevance of my work. In fact, I seriously thought about withdrawing and kind of retiring from journalism. Because I thought all of these threats and intimidation to me and to my family, my dear, near and dear ones, what is this for if this has no impact? And then comes a day like this. So, first was Shaheen Bagh movement, when women who were never allowed to step out of their kitchen rooms suddenly came to the protest site and started shouting slogans, started facing the cameras. मैं तो ये भी नहीं कहती हूँ फेसिंग द कैमराज, मैं कहती हूँ चैलेंजिंग द कैमराज, क्योंकि वो जो आए थे टीवी कैमराज वहाँ, वो उनकी आवाज़ सुनने नहीं आए थे, वो प्रोपेगेंडा के लिए आए थे. उस प्रोपेगेंडा से फाइट कर रही थी वो औरतें जिन्होंने, इफ एनी पब्लिक गैदरिंग दे हैड एवर बिन टू वाज मे बी अ शादी इन अ फैमिली, or maybe there is a religious congregation called an Ijtima, and that too not many women go. So those women, India's most marginalized, that Mr. Modi said they had been kind of liberated. He was the messiah for them because he passed this triple talaq bill. They were the ones who came on street and educated large part of Indian people about their rights, about constitution, about democracy, about equality. And when people's movements start, they don't end like this. Another was the farmers' movement. Nobody thought farmers were going to last for over a year. And the only group of people which brought this person and the government to its knees was our sons of the soil, our farmers. And I saw not just men but women farmers. I think there would be a time when the stories of those women who were farmers again, you know, I mean, वो उस तरह की औरतें थी कि बिटिया नाम था, जब शादी हुई, बिटिया की शादी हुई तो बहू बन गई, बहू के बाद वो माँ बन गई, माँ के बाद सास बनी, दादी बनी और मर गई, कभी उसका नाम भी नहीं रखा गया. Many of those women who were sitting on the protest site for over a year were those women who were never named, because there was no need for her to have a name. So she was a bitiya and bahu and then ma and then, you know, dadi and then a dead woman, a dead person. Those women fought with authoritarianism, with this strong prime minister, and brought the government to its knees. So when we talk about Professor Jayashankar, and now since Telangana is now in existence, so what's the point of us gathering here? Why are we here? See, the objective of this whole exercise, we've achieved the objective. Why are we here? Because we can decide when we start the movement, but we don't get to decide when we end the movement.
Yeah.
And it kind of brings to life a faculty of in our mind which we thought did not even exist. I was a regular journalist doing regular journalism. I existed before Narendra Modi arrived. How did I become this democracy defender, you know, this person who will put everything on the line to save democracy? I did not take up this role. The role was given to me, and I had no options but to take it. So you cannot do away with the organization you have right now, even when Telangana is a state. Because Professor Jayashankar decided to start the movement, but this is going to, now it is a people's movement. And this is going to take different shapes, different forms, and different meanings. Like right now, a journalist from northern India has come here to deliver a lecture in the memory of a man who fought for a state in the south of India.
Very good. Thank you.
So this is how we bring it together, and that's why I said the only tribe I have right now is that I'm a global citizen. That I am a democratic person, an internationalist. So this is what brings me and Professor Jayashankar together, the idea of India, a certain idea of India, a certain idea of the world. So these two movements, they started of course in late 19 and then 2020 and 21st, but then they still have the impact of those movements in these elections. That's what the point I'm trying to make here is that the seeds which were sowed during that time, almost 4 or 5 years ago, were the fruits of that were seen now. That a whole awakened citizenry, जागरूक जनता, जागरूक नागरिक तब से बन रहा था, लगातार बन रहा था. आप सोचिए कि जो पश्चिमी उत्तर प्रदेश, वेस्टर्न यूपी का जो एरिया है, जहां 2013 में इतने भीषण दंगे हुए, जहां हिंदू मुसलमान जाट एक दूसरे के खून के प्यासे हो गए, आज उस वेस्टर्न यूपी में, which was considered a laboratory for the Hindutva machinery, now BJP has lost heavily in that area of western Uttar Pradesh. So this is the direct result, not even a byproduct, direct result of farmers' movement. Now comes the Bharat Jodo Yatra. Bharat Jodo Yatra, when Rahul Gandhi started, I'm sure it was a great hit even in Telangana for that matter. And there is some political evidence that we have which proves that even Congress Party's victory in Telangana has to do something directly or indirectly with the fact that Rahul Gandhi passed through Telangana, and it kind of garnered support for him and his party. But I don't know whether he started off this yatra as an electoral yatra. When he announced that he was trying to do something like this, a group of journalists, my friends, we sat down and we thought, what a crazy man. What is he even trying to do? And what is he going to get him? He's going to be here for 5 days and then he's going to go back. He is a part-time, even somebody like me. We thought he was a part-time politician, a reluctant politician, a Rajkumar who kind of is forced into politics. He doesn't even like politics. Satta zahar hai, yaad hoga aapko, wo bayan. So who thinks that power is poison? What can we expect from that person? But I think what Rahul Gandhi wanted to do and what he ended up doing was, in one single sentence, this was an anti-communal yatra. A yatra against communalism. They said Bharat Jodo. You cannot Jodo Bharat without fighting communalism. And this brought a lot of hope to, again, the most oppressed section, to Muslims, to Dalits. It tried to bring people together, Hindus and Muslims, which this poisonous ideology was trying to divide them. So these three major things I feel are very important to, which has brought us to this day. And then emergence of independent media. So now where we are right now, in the next 4 or 5 minutes, I'm going to wrap up with this, where we are right now. I think we have returned to normal politics. Normal politics where the BJP is not going to get edge of Hindutva or the brand of Modi. So that's number one, the return to normal politics where Narendra Modi is like any other politician. Like he's like Rahul Gandhi, he's like Mayawati, he's like Tejaswi Yadav, he's like, your chief minister in Telangana, Mr. Reddy. He's like anybody else. He's no Paramatma. So Indian people have told him he's a normal human, the return to normal politics, and there is no Paramatma ruling over India anymore. That's number one. Then number two, that issues of normal people, normal issues of normal people will matter. Inflation, price rise, issues of education, universal health and education. And you will care about your everyday ordinary issues like मेरे सड़क क्यों टूटी हुई है, मेरे घर के पास स्कूल क्यों नहीं है, यू आर नो मोर केयरिंग फॉर मुझे हिंदुत्व बचाना है, मुझे सनातन बचाना है, इसलिए मुझे नरेंद्र मोदी को बार बार वोट करना है. नो. I mean, some of you might still be thinking, but I'm saying many of you have now gone back to previous politics, previous lives, the life after. So this is the life after. So you're basically, it's a new era, a new republic, where there is a life after, जहाँ आपको लोगों ने झंझोड़ दिया, आपको थोड़ा जहर का इंजेक्शन लगा हुआ था, आप नशे में थे, आपको समझ नहीं आ रहा था आप कहाँ हैं, आपको लग रहा था जब तक अब्दुल को सज़ा दी जा रही है तब तक मैं ठीक हूँ, मैं स्कूल नहीं जाता. लेकिन अब्दुल को तो सज़ा मिली जो मिली, लेकिन आपके बच्चे की भी फीस देने के लिए पैसे नहीं हैं, आप सब्ज़ी नहीं खरीद पा रहे हैं, गैस सिलेंडर नहीं है घर में. तो वो जो जहर का इंजेक्शन था उसका असर धीरे धीरे कम हुआ और अब वी आर बैक टू नॉर्मल लाइफ, बैक टू नॉर्मल पॉलिटिक्स, नॉर्मल इश्यूज ऑफ नॉर्मल पीपल, ऑर्डिनरी इश्यूज ऑफ नॉर्मल ऑर्डिनरी पीपल, एंड दैट्स ग्रेट न्यूज़. Now finally, lessons. Lesson number 1, democracy is hard work. बहुत मेहनत करनी पड़ती है. Democracy is hard work. Right now, what we are trying to do in this hall is a democratic exercise. This is democracy at play in this room. एक छोटी मोटी क्रांति हो रही है इस कमरे में. कुछ लोग बोल रहे हैं, कुछ लोग सुन रहे हैं और हम सब सोच रहे हैं. These people have problem with people who think because they don't want us to think. They want to think on our behalf. So it will not be an exaggeration if I say that meetings like these also have a role to play in election results like the one that we had seen a month ago. And that is why day after day, hour after hour, speaker after speaker, hall after hall, democracy is hard work. इस सिर्फ इसको ही मतलब इस लेक्चर को ऑर्गेनाइज करने में आई एम श्योर देयर वाज अ लॉट ऑफ हार्ड वर्क that came into play. There were resources which were put into kind of, organizing this. You guys came on a Sunday, and when there is a major festival that's taking place in the state, to listen to somebody who you may not have anything in common at all. That's democracy at play. So democracy is hard work, and democracy, the battle of democracy will be fought by the most oppressed and the most marginalized. ये हम पढ़े लिखे बनिया ब्राह्मण पठानों सैयदों का काम नहीं है. Democracy will be fought by the poorest, the most oppressed. By Dalits, Adivasis, by our laborers, by our farmers, by our women, by our youths. We will fight the battle of democracy.
Very good.
Number 2, politics of hate has a limit. And the people of India have shown that whenever that limit is crossed, they are going to tell them that we are supreme. So the voice of people and the power of people is supreme, the power of unity. And finally, the importance of information, debate and discussion. We've already partly discussed this, but I will again go back to this. That it is our duty as citizens that we keep informing ourselves and also keep engaging with people who do not agree with us. I'm giving you some homework, that talk to one person every day who you do not agree with or who does not agree with you, whose worldview is not the same as yours. जिस आदमी से झगड़ा होने की सबसे बड़ी पॉसिबिलिटी हो, उसी आदमी से बात कीजिए, एक आदमी से रोज. And see 5 years down the line where will we be? कोई बात नहीं है, मतलब झगड़े पे बात खत्म हो जाए, बट बात होनी चाहिए. So let's say even in your neighborhood there is an RSS Shakha taking place. You will go to one of those people and talk to them. What is this Shakha about? Let him explain what he wants to do. And then you explain yourself why you do not want to attend this Shakha. I'm saying such contrasting and opposing point of views. So as a byproduct of this, there are a couple of things that have happened. Rise of the politics of opposition. And it is very important at this juncture that this gain, this democratic gain, it's not some kind of a big or huge victory that we can see right now. Narendra Modi is still the Prime Minister, Rahul Gandhi is still, the leader of opposition. Nothing much has changed. What has changed is it has given us a window of hope, a window of gain. We don't have to lose sight. When I'm saying we, means people who believe in the idea of India, which believes in equality, democracy, liberalism, and all of that. Nice, fine idea of an open and a free world. That's us. So I'm saying this window that we've been given, we don't have to lose sight, and we don't have to miss that very important, crucial moment in history. I think if there's one thing I want you to take away from this lecture is that we have to build on this moment and turn this window into a door and then a veranda. Build on this because you have people's attention. People want to listen to you. And that's not always. I don't know whether in 2027 we are going to have this window. I don't know whether, so many of you will come to listen to me in 2027. But if in 2024, if you've come here to listen to me, then I better make my point clear. At least I have you now. Now is my time. So now is our time to build on this very hopeful moment. So democracy is Zindabad, people's Zindabad, people's power Zindabad. Thank you very much. NCPSP. I mean, I can't disagree with you.
Yeah.
That there is no existence of soft Hindutva even in this election. In fact, there were many people from the Muslim community who become upset with me when I raised this issue. So I interviewed this person, Ghazipur's Member of Parliament, Afzal Ansari. And I asked the same question that why your party did not give tickets to enough Muslims. So they say no. I mean, right now the strategy is that Muslims will have to sacrifice and don't ask for any political tickets till we defeat Hindutva. So I think the truth of the matter is that many of the so-called secular parties are still under the pressure of Hindutva. If this was not the pressure, maybe they would have given more tickets and more representation. It's not about some favor that a community is asking. So I agree with you. When will this end? I don't know, but I think there has to be some internal reform and internal, I would say, thinking within the community also. Not just wait for a liberator, a messiah to come and save the community. As I said, the window that we've got is not just for people at large in India, but also more specifically for Muslims to do their educational empowerment, to do social upliftment, give proper representations to women, give the leadership roles to women. Women can. Women have led a historic movement called the NTCA NRC movement, and that was led by Muslim women. So Muslim women can do it. So it is about time now to give more representation to women, and I promise to you that the next time you ask me this question, try to give the leadership to them for 5 years and see how the community and the country is going to change.
Soon after the parliamentary election, they are kept quiet. There so many things that happened across the India, but they are not opening the mouth because it belongs to a marginalized community.
I agree.
Yeah,
I mean, although I think my and your voice has also, it kind of reached him, Rahul Gandhi especially,
Yeah.
when he talked about atrocities against
he said minorities, including Muslims and Sikhs and Christians. So he did say minorities. But I'll have to give it to the Congress party when this Uttar Pradesh directive came. Uttar Pradesh Police's directive of putting a nameplate for vegetable and fruit vendors. Congress party opposed it tooth and nail. So I think it is making a difference, maybe slow, but it is. Okay, so there is this question.
जिसमें जो है